Our next guest needs no introduction. He's a #1 best-selling author, one of the world's most trusted self-help gurus, and he's dedicated his life to making our lives better.
And now he wants to help you take control of your wallet once and for all. Here to discuss his new book, Money, Master the Game, is Tony Robbins. Welcome to Arise 360.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get some housekeeping out of the way first. How tall are you exactly?
6'7".
6'7".
Yes.
My goodness.
Wow.
And it's true you can walk on hot coals.
Yes, anybody can do that, of course.
Oh,
yeah.
Anybody
I don't
can
think
do
so.
that.
I've seen the video, and he did it like, oh, just walking down the street. Amazing.
No, I only did that years ago. I used to use skydiving as the metaphor, getting somebody to break through their fears. But, when I got my seminars to 5,000 and 10,000 people, it's pretty hard to get that many people in the sky over the night when you're doing an event. But I just use for metaphors to show people how to get themselves over their fear and get them to take action. So much of our life is stopped just because of our beliefs and just because of our fears. And so anytime you can train people to do that, they can start to shift their life.
All right. Well, let's talk about your new book. Steve Forbes called your new book a gold mine of money-making information. Now, that is a glowing recommendation.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
So, reading this book, is it going to make us rich?
Well, it can make you rich. It comes to the richest people in the world, but its real focus is to make you free. And that's different for everybody. Like somebody needs $1 billion to be rich. Somebody else might just have, a certain level of income that you don't have to work for and you feel rich, right? But I started this because for 37 years of my life, I've been obsessed with knowing what are the best strategies for creating change quickly, breakthroughs. And I know that the things that affect your life are your body and your relationship and your emotions and obviously money. And but in 2008, when all hell broke loose, it affected me very directly because I grew up extremely poor. We had, we lost our home, we lost our car, we had no food at times. And so when I saw people losing their homes and I saw people being in a position where they lost half of what they'd saved their whole life, it wasn't a statistic to me. I mean, I get it. So I wanted to be part of the solution. So I thought, most people don't know it. But I've interviewed and I've coached Paul Tudor Jones. He's one of the top 10 financial traders in the world for 21 years. And he has not lost money in 21 years. No one else can say that. And I thought if I could take him and if I could also interview 50 of the smartest people in the world, people started with nothing and became self-made billionaires, Nobel laureates, and I could take that information and simplify it, then I can help anybody. And it's been a 4-year journey, and that's what this book is.
Well, who are some of the people you interviewed, and what was the most important lesson you learned from them?
Oh my gosh, good question. So many. I'd say Carl Icahn was one of the most unique. Carl Icahn, most people don't think of Warren Buffett as the greatest investor, but Carl Icahn, if you were with him since 1968, gave you a 30% return per year. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Buffett gave you 20%. He's made a 1,600% return in the last 13 years, and he's the only one on that list that the average person can go into without a bunch of fees. There's a way to actually invest with Carl Icahn. But I'll tell you the most important thing I learned. The most successful investors in the world do not take big risks. You think they do.
Yeah.
What they do is something called asymmetrical risk reward. They know you can't afford to lose money, so their goal is to use the least amount of risk, get the greatest amount of reward. So for example, there's a guy named Kyle Bass. He took $30 million of other people's money and turned it into $2 billion in 2 years in the middle of the crisis.
Now, how did he do that?
That's a great question.
Was it all legal?
It was all legal. I said, how do you do that? Everybody goes, he's a genius. Well, I'd affected his life when he was in college, so he gave me 3 hours. We sat down. He goes, I'll show it to you, Tony. He never risked more than 6 cents to make $1. Now think about that. If you're wrong, you miss 6 cents. You know another risk 6 cents, another 6 cents. He could be wrong 15 times and still make money. He wasn't wrong 15 times. So these individuals know how to do what it takes to transform and make you do really well in a very short period of time.
Now, this is your first book in nearly 2 decades.
Yes.
What took you so long?
I have a few day jobs. About every 4 to 5 days, I'm usually on a plane. I'm in 15 countries. I see 250,000 people a year, and I love those live events, 5,000 to 10,000 people rocking. I have a lot of companies. I do over $5 billion a year now between all the companies we do. So I got a lot of responsibility. But what pushed me over the edge was wanting to give people these answers. What my real goal was is take anybody. Take a millennial who's just got out of school with a bunch of debt and show them how they can still turn around. Take a baby boomer saying, how am I going to ever turn this around? So I went to a guy named Ray Dalio. Most people don't know his name, but he's the most successful hedge fund guy in the world, largest hedge fund guy in the world. 160 billion, which those numbers sound so big you don't know what they are, but you had to have a $5 billion net worth and give him $100 million just to start with him, or you couldn't even talk with him.
Wow.
That was 10 years ago. Now it doesn't matter how much money you have, you won't do it. So I sat down with him and asked him this question. I said, look, if you couldn't give your kids any of your money, because I'm thinking about what I can do for other people. None of your money, and they're going to start from nothing, and they're going to build up, and they were going to have those gut checks of the market going up and down. What would you do for them? What strategy? What portfolio? And he said, I'll tell you exactly. I've spent 15 years figuring it out. All my money is there. My kids' money is there. It's this thing called this all-weather portfolio.
All-weather portfolio.
So it can do well in anything. He goes, but I said, well, how do I get access? He goes, there's no access. $5 billion. I don't take anybody's money. So I said, well, since you don't take anybody's money, give me the formula. He's like, Tony, I can't do that. That's my secret. That's my secret sauce. I said, yeah, but your bread and butter's taken care of. You're never going to take another dime.
Right.
After 2 or 3 hours, this guy is so generous that at the end he said, okay, well, there's leverage. It's complex. I said, do one without leverage. The average person could spend 15 minutes a year and do. He sat down and laid out this formula. When the financial guys went and tested it, all the way back 75 years. Now, you think about it. In the last 10 years, we've had 250% up and downs in the market. People lost everything. In 75 years, there's been so much volatility. In 75 years, he's been successful with this. 85% of the time, it made money when they tested it, back-tested it. And when it did lose, it lost 1.6% on average. The biggest loss in 75 years was not 50, 40, 30. It was less than 4%. And it's averaged a 10% return. So that's in the book. You get the book and you just do that alone, 15 minutes a year, and you don't have these gut checks. This year, it's ahead, right, you know, when the stock market dropped all of its benefits in October of the whole year, it went up during that time, and right now it's just slightly above the stock market without all the ups and downs. It's truly amazing.
I'm ready for that formula, but you also have 7 simple steps to financial freedom. So please, what are some of those steps, and can any normal Joe do them?
They really can. That's why I designed this. I wanted anybody to be able to be free. And I'll tell you the biggest mistake people make. The biggest mistake is we all think we got to get rich. We got to get this big chunk of money, and then it's all going to be cool. Well, when you find that people who get a bunch of money, rarely do they keep a bunch of money.
No, we hear about the lottery curse all the time.
All the time. Or athletes that make all this money and then it's gone, or musicians. So here's what's really true. There's a guy named Theodore Johnson who worked for UPS.
Okay.
He never made more than $14,000 in a year. He was a driver originally.
$14,000 a year.
At 70, he was worth $70 million. How the hell do you do that? The answer is...
Well, how the hell do you do that?
I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how he did it. You ask Warren Buffett, what made you rich? He said 3 things. Live in America, there's opportunity. Having good genes, so I lived a long time. And compound interest. We all heard of compound interest, but this guy took 20% of what he earned, and he never looked at it. So what I teach people to do, you may not do 20, you might do 10. But even you say, I can't save anything, if the government came and taxed you 10%, you'd hate it, but you'd pay it. So he never saw the money. He went straight into an investment account. And it compounded all those years, and that's what gave him the return. And now I show you where to put it, not based on me, but based on 50 of the greatest investors in history. And anybody can do it. You can do this if you're just getting started. You can do this if you have little or no money. But what you got to do is get started.
So 20%.
20% is what he did.
Don't look at it.
But if you put 10% away, you'll still do well. I can show you if you say, I can only do 5. I interviewed these Nobel Prize nominated guys. They said, here's what you do. We all think we can't do it now. Today is so valuable to us. We forget tomorrow is even more valuable. Said, pay down 5%. Take that off and don't even see it. Have it automatically taken out. And then go to your employer and say, every time I get an increase, take the first 3% and put in that account and don't show it to me. They did this in the Midwest with a bunch of blue-collar workers who couldn't save 3%. They started with 3%. Within 14 years, they're saving 15%, some of them 20. And when you get to those numbers, over time, you truly will become wealthy if you just manage your things at the most basic level.
Well, you've clearly been putting some money away because you're giving all the proceeds from this book to charity. Why was that important for you to do, and what charities?
Oh, well, 11 years old, I had no money, no food. We had a real tough environment.
So
and
how do you go from this impoverished child to the man you are today?
Well, let me tell you why. First, if I may, I'll be happy to answer that. I did this because somebody fed my family that day, and it wasn't the food that changed my life. It was the fact that it made me believe strangers care. So when I was 17, I fed 2 families, and then 4 the next year, and then 8. Then I got my friends involved. So now, over 37 years, I've fed 42 million people, paying it back, paying it forward, if you would. But when I wrote this, most people didn't pay attention last year. Congress cut the budget for food stamps. They don't call it food stamps anymore, but I lived on them. $8.7 billion. Our family wouldn't have survived without it. 2 million people have been taken off this. So I said, I want to call attention to it. What if I gave all the profits in advance? I thought I could feed 10 million people. But as the years gone by, I got more and more inspired. So I'm feeding 50 million people, all the profits and a check above that. And I'm working with Feeding America. They're the best hunger relief organization in the United States. And they're helping me get matching funds. So hopefully we'll feed 100 million, but I'm guaranteeing 50 million.
Awesome.
Okay, so tell us about your journey, because how do you go from this impoverished child to working with the likes of Hugh Jackman, Oprah Winfrey, the list goes on and on. How does that happen?
I met a man when I was 17 named Jim Rohn, who's a personal development speaker, and he taught me something. He said, Tony, if every day you work harder on yourself than anything else, and then you take what you learn and find a way to add value to other people, if you'll do more for other people than anybody else does, over the decades, maybe not over the 6 months or the year, you will dominate any industry you're in. You will be the person everybody goes to because you'll add the most value. In the marketplace, not our souls are invaluable, we don't have to do anything. But in the marketplace, you're paid for your value. And if you can become more valuable, if you go to work at McDonald's, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're going to get $7.75 an hour because lots of people can figure out how to do that cashier in a few minutes.
Right.
If you're David Tepper, who's in the financial business, made $3.5 billion last year, which sounds obscene to people. But is it obscene? He gave people a 42% return. People like you and I, if we don't know better, put our money in the bank and they give you 1/3 of 1%. That'll take you 3 lifetimes to double your money. At 42%, you're going to do it in a year, 2.5 years. 2.5 years versus 3 lifetimes. Is it worth it? It probably is to the people who invested in it. Me too.
Have you always been this energetic?
No. I used to be very depressed, and when you're depressed, your energy is low, you're slow, and so forth. But I drew a line in the sand one day because I realized if I didn't, I believed that depression equals death. And so I decided instead that every day I was going to feed my mind, because if you feed, your life is a reflection of what you feed it. And if you don't pay attention, life feeds it, whatever. And then I work out and deliver physical demands on my body. And so just like being an athlete, it makes you mentally fit, emotionally fit. And that's what I think we all need to do.
Well, it seems like the sky is the limit for you, so what's next?
I want to do this first. I got a lot of people to feed.
I'm sure you're doing a lot of other things at the same time.
Yes, I am right now.
Oh, well, this is so exciting. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
you for all of the
Thank you for this crazy wall.
No, it's all about you. You deserve it and more. You deserve 10, 20, 30 walls.
I'm going to show a picture to my wife. She'll put things in balance.
Okay,
really
thank you so much.
so
And
much.
don't make us wait too long for the next book, okay?
And please go get
right.
this book. All the proceeds go to charity. Thank you so much again. And we'll be right back with more Arise Entertainment 360.